This is TV 10 and 55 Focus, a program dealing with issues affecting everyone on Long Island and the tri-state area. Now your host, Richard Rose.
Hi, I'm Richard Rose, and welcome to Focus. It is our pleasure today to have Long Island Congressman Peter King. Welcome to the show, Congressman.
Good to be here, Richard. Thank you.
Well, we begin talking about what is the big news in Republican circles, the presidential race. Any surprise to you so far?
I was surprised that Governor Romney ran as strongly as he did in New Hampshire. I thought after the close race in Iowa and with the media onslaught by Newt Gingrich and others that I thought he'd be lucky to get like 31%. The fact that he got 39 was, to me, a very solid showing for Governor Romney.
Yeah, he had been showing 40%. We have some video here, voters going to the polls, and then you see John Huntsman had been hoping to make his big stand there. It didn't quite work out, finishing in third to a surprising performance for a lot of people, still not respecting Ron Paul as a potential Republican candidate. What do you think of the Ron Paul phenomenon?
I've known Ron Paul for years. We've been on the same committee together, Financial Services Committee. Very nice guy, but I really disagree with so many of his policies. I mean, he'd be... basically, he wants us to withdraw from the world, and that would be a nice, ideal world to live in, but that is not the world we live in.
What about John Huntsman? Do you think that his performance was enough for him to really continue on?
I think it's enough for him to stay on in South Carolina and Florida and hope that something happens to Mitt Romney and that he'd be able to fill that. But unless something unexpected happens in South Carolina or Florida, I would say John Huntsman's probably run his course. He ran a good race in New Hampshire. Now, the reason I was pleasantly surprised that Mitt Romney did so well, he had been at 40, but then on primary morning he was down to 32 or 31 in the tracking polls. And usually in a primary, when your numbers are going down, they keep going down.
Right.
But instead, his went back up to 39 on the day of the election itself.
Anything you can figure from that, or is there anything telling about that to you?
I think people were probably getting uncertain. They were hearing all the onslaught against Mitt Romney. So they went probably from pro-Romney to undecided, but then on election day itself, or primary day itself, they felt that he was the safest bet.
Well, now it's on to South Carolina. You know, it's impressive to have a 2-for-2 performance for any candidate. It's very difficult to pull that off, Iowa and New Hampshire. Then you go into a much more conservative bastion of Republican strength. South Carolina, what do you think is going to happen there?
Again, I think Governor Romney should do pretty well. He has the governor supporting him in the state. He had Senator DeMint had supported him 4 years ago, and I think he's leaning toward him now. Also, so long as there's a bunch of opponents in there to divide up the anti-Romney vote, if it was just Romney against Santorum or Romney even against Perry, I think Perry's going to make a stronger showing in South Carolina than he did anywhere else. But so long as there's a bunch of opponents there, I think Governor Romney should get somewhere in the 30s and win.
Well, right now, Republicans going through some angst, though, because of the attacks that are coming against Mitt Romney about his Bain Capital Company, and they're coming from Newt Gingrich and Rick Perry. And I've seen Rick Perry even be challenged by some conservative commentators saying you sound like you're an Occupy Wall Street member, the way you're attacking Mitt Romney. Any concern that this provides ammunition for the Democrats, for President Obama in the fall, and that it backfires in some way?
Yeah, I'm actually very concerned. I think that Newt Gingrich is really putting the party at risk on this. Listen, these are legitimate complaints for Barack Obama to make against Mitt Romney, because that is what you expect liberal Democrats to do. Newt Gingrich, claiming to be a conservative Republican, coming at Mitt Romney for being involved with Bain, to me, it's really hypocritical. But it gives ammunition to President Obama, to his campaign staff. And I don't think it's enough to stop Governor Romney in the primaries, but it can be enough to weaken him and create, again, real ammunition for the, for the enemy, for the opposition.
Yeah, because they're calling, I mean, you have Rick Perry calling him a vulture capitalist instead of a venture capitalist, and saying facts are facts, that, this is what Bain Capital did. Do you think that's what Bain Capital did?
No, I don't pretend to be an expert on Bain Capital, but basically I would say they generated more jobs than they took away. They salvage companies, and you have companies like Staples and Sports Authority basically existing today because of Bain. And I think there can be an honest debate over whether they went too far, whether they could have done it differently. But on balance, I think Bain did what it was supposed to do. And again, I can see President Obama making precise arguments against it and let Governor Romney defend himself. But for Newt Gingrich to be coming at him, sounding like a Michael Moore or something, and also to be quoting the New York Times all the time, since when do conservative Republicans rely on the New York Times for interpretation of facts?
So do you see, as some analysts do, the possibility of Mitt Romney locking this up pretty early?
Yeah, if he wins South Carolina and Florida, it should be over because Senator Santorum, Governor Perry, and Newt Gingrich will no longer have the resources to match him because coming up, I guess it's March 4th, whatever that date is in there, where it's almost a Super Tuesday, you have a lot of big state primaries. You have to be organized all over the country, and Santorum and Gingrich are not. I don't see how Huntsman could be by then. So basically, if he wins South Carolina and Florida, I would say Governor Romney pretty much has it locked up. Ron Paul will be in the race continually, probably getting between 10 and 18, 19% in a lot of the states.
So you think he's going to persist? Is he potentially a third-party candidate?
I would hope not, but I could see Ron staying in it because he doesn't have to do as much. He doesn't need the organization. He has one, but he doesn't need it as much. He has rock-solid support. I first noticed this back in 1999, I guess it was. Ron had just gotten reelected to Congress, and I was named chairman of the Domestic Monetary Policy Subcommittee, which was not really a big deal. And generally, you had 5 or 6 people show up for the hearings. Well, Ron was on the subcommittee. First hearing I had, we must have gotten thousands of emails, phone calls. Hearing room was packed with people. These were Ron Paul supporters who, like him, are opposed to the Federal Reserve, and they see it as being almost part of a conspiracy. So he has a hardcore following that's out there.
Fanatically devoted, some say.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, I remember being with Rudy Giuliani in the 2008 campaign. No matter where you went, there were people out in the highways holding Ron Paul signs.
Ron Paul signs.
Yeah.
And he's 76 years old, and he has teenagers that are holding Ron Paul signs for him. So it is quite the phenomenon for him, but a lot of people think it's a sideshow, and in the end, Mitt Romney is going to be the candidate. And how do you assess his potential against President Barack Obama in the fall?
Okay, now I'll be step back and be a political analyst. I think that his strong points are that if the main issue is the economy, he comes across as a businessman with a lot of experience, very competent, very decent guy. No one questions his integrity, good family, looks good, looks presidential. Those are all the positives. The negative, I would say, is that he doesn't generate excitement yet. Unlike Ronald Reagan or Barack Obama did in 2008, he really mobilized the Democratic base and was able to appeal to independents. Ronald Reagan did the same thing with the Republican base and was able to bring in Reagan Democrats. So far, Mitt Romney has not been able to make that type of visceral connection with the voters.
What about you? Are you endorsing anyone?
I have not officially endorsed anyone yet. I'll probably endorse Governor Romney. Again, I felt no need to jump in. I have been very critical of Newt Gingrich. So to that extent, I've been almost acting as a hitman for Mitt Romney, but not officially, just on my own volition.
You think it's payback, as some believe, with Newt Gingrich on Mitt Romney for the way Romney came after him with millions of dollars of television ads in Iowa?
Yeah, and I could see there being some merit to what Newt Gingrich is doing, even if I disagreed with his positions, if he had a chance to win. But he has no chance of winning. Basically, he wants to bring Romney down out of anger toward Romney. He wants to basically bring the whole house down on top of them.
What positive message would you say has come out of this? Because this kind of attack politics is common in the primary season, no matter which party you're talking about.
Yeah.
What positive message has come out for Republicans? They've had it all to themselves as far as the headlines, with Barack Obama being unopposed.
Yeah, I think they have pretty much established the fact that the economy is weak, and it's because of President Obama. Now, fair or unfair, that I think is the consensus they've been able to establish, and that's what President Obama is going to have to try to overcome. And I agree with him. I think the president has handled the economy wrong, but I don't know if the American people were that certain of that 4 or 5 months ago. I think from the debates, they've pretty much established in the public eye that President Obama is at fault and his policies are failing.
All right, well, we're going to turn from presidential politics to domestic terrorism. How big is the threat? The congressman has investigated it very closely. We'll talk about his hearings when we return right here on Focus.
TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And welcome back. I'm Richard Rose here with our guest, Long Island Republican Congressman Peter King. And Congressman King, you have conducted hearings on the threat from domestic terrorism. Most recently is last month. What's new there?
The most recent hearing I had back on December 7th was actually a joint hearing with Senator Lieberman and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. And we focused on Islamic radicalization involving the U.S. military. Really, it was two-pronged. One is attacks against the military, and secondly, attacks from within the military. And this was a bipartisan hearing. Senator Lieberman was a great ally, is a great ally to have. And just 2-3 days ago, we saw an arrest here in the United States and of a former soldier. He had been in the army in Iraq until recently. He was actually an intelligence cryptographer. I don't know all that means, but it means that he would have access to an awful lot of valuable intelligence and could have in many ways done more harm than actually a shooter or a person who was setting off grenades. And he left the army a month earlier. Still haven't figured out how he did that. Anyway, he was on his way to Kenya to join al-Shabaab, to go through Kenya to Somalia to join al-Shabaab. He had converted to radical Islam, and he wanted to fight alongside al-Shabaab, which is an affiliate of al-Qaeda. He was intercepted, and he was arrested and arraigned. This, again, I think demonstrates that we've done a lot to weaken al-Qaeda, the core al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and along the Pakistan border there. We've also, by killing Alaki, have weakened al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. But we still have, the growing threat now is from people in this country who are either radicalized over the internet or are lone wolves or have individual connections with al-Qaeda, and they're living in the country legally. They have no prior terrorist activity, and they're under the radar screen. And he's a person who's actually in the U.S. Army.
Well, you're the head of Homeland Security, you know, in Congress there and in the House, and you know, does this recall to your mind at all the case of, I guess, Nidal Hassan? He previously was serving in the U.S. military.
Yeah, Major Hassan was in the Army. He was a major in the U.S. Army. He was actually a doctor. And he, at Fort Hood, Texas, murdered 13 people there, innocent people. And in going through the records afterwards, we find out there was actually, if he had been monitored more carefully, there was a pattern developing. He actually had been in contact with al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And I think it's because of political correctness, neither the military nor the FBI wanted to take action against him because they thought they'd be accused of being biased. One of the rationales was, yes, he was dealing with al-Awlaki, who was the head of, one of the leaders of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in Yemen, but he was seeking theological or religious advice. Yeah, the advice was, is it morally wrong to kill American soldiers? I mean, that's the type of advice he was seeking.
And that's the crux of this debate that we find ourselves caught on sometimes, and you yourself have run into that in just trying to conduct these hearings, right?
Yeah, I'm not trying to be a martyr here, but I've gotten tremendous opposition, blowback from elements in the media, special interests, liberal democratic groups, basically say that I'm being biased, I'm anti-Muslim. I've had 4 hearings, one on radicalization generally in the Muslim community. Then we had one on radicalization in the prisons, Islamic radicalization. Then we had al-Shabaab, which is the Somali group, which has had almost 40 young Americans have gone over to fight for al-Shabaab in Somalia.
Where are they active, in Somalia?
In Somalia, but the concern is they would be coming back to the U.S. In fact, a number of them were linking up with Alaki in Yemen, and he definitely wanted to send them back here. So that's a real concern there. And they're actually being recruited here in the U.S. in mosques, primarily in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And then the 4th hearing was on radicalization in the military. And I can tell you that military officials are very concerned about what they believe are radical Islamists in the U.S. Army today, actually in the U.S. military.
Is there a confused approach on fighting this war on terror now? Some question whether we even have a war on terror anymore because we're withdrawing troops. Critics of it, as you've described, attacking your hearings, and critics saying it's like chasing our own tail, that we're only further inciting more terrorism, even conducting the types of operations that we do. And then all this confusion about who are our allies, what's going on in Pakistan. What is the state of the war on terror right now?
Well, it is confusing. You're right. I think what hurts us in many ways the most, it's good but it's bad, is that because we have not been successfully attacked, people lose interest and they feel, well, the threat can't be that bad. I'm the only member of Congress who's on the Homeland Security Committee and the Intelligence Committee. And I can tell you unequivocally that the threats are real, the threats are still there. They're morphing. It's no longer a large central al-Qaeda unit, but there are splinter groups forming. There's people here in the U.S. who are intent on carrying out attacks, and we have to be constantly monitoring it. And I don't accept the fact that people say, well, if we didn't attack them, they wouldn't attack us. Well, we didn't attack anybody prior to September 11th. In fact, the only time, for instance, in the previous 8 years prior to September 11th that we used American troops was actually to protect Muslims against Christians in Bosnia and in Kosovo. So, no, I think that al-Qaeda and the people who follow it want to kill us no matter what.
Let's turn to Iran right now. A lot going on there. We've been rescuing some of their people on overloaded boats from pirates.
Right.
Yet there's been a scientist killed there, with them accusing the United States, Israel, or Britain somehow conspiring to kill a nuclear scientist because of our concerns about their nuclear capabilities. And at the same time, they have an American that they're holding that they've now just sentenced to death. What is going on with Iran, and what are you concerned about there?
Well, I'm concerned about everything about Iran. As far as the American sentenced to death, there's absolutely no evidence against him. He's former U.S. military. He was a Marine. He was visiting his grandparents. He's an Iranian American. The main evidence against him is they found a Marine ID card on him in his wallet. Well, if you're going to go over as a spy, the last thing you're going to be carrying around is a ID card from the U.S. military. So this, to me, is a totally trumped up. Now, he was involved, and this could have been maybe embarrassing for Iran. He was involved with a company that actually did provide war game materials on Iran, and but this is all public knowledge. This wasn't any secret.
You would think the rescues we pulled off, some of them incredible rescues, would engender some goodwill towards an American citizen, no?
Yeah, you would, except I think this government is so fanatically anti-American. Now, Iran is one of the only countries in that region of the world where the population supports us. I mean, polling I've seen done by CIA and others shows that the Iranian people do support the Americans, which is not true in most Arab countries or Muslim countries in that region. But Iran, people do support us. The government, though, is 1,000% anti-American. Ahmadinejad himself is virtually a madman. They want to perfect the nuclear weapon. They want to get the nuclear weapon. And if they get that, that is really a definitive crossing line. We really can't allow that to happen.
And so does that play into the thought that the Iranians are claiming that Western powers, particularly the United States or Britain, Israel, were somehow behind this assassination of this nuclear scientist, the fourth scientist killed in the last few years?
I don't think it serves any purpose to comment one way or the other. Let the Iranians think what they want. I think this is, this is a life and death situation, and let Iran conclude whatever they want.
So the stakes are that high. I mean, this is serious business.
Yeah, very serious business. Absolutely. This is probably the most serious, pressing issue right now in the world, affecting us, affecting Israel, and also affecting Europe.
You mean you think we could go to war with Iran?
Depending how far Iran pushes it. If they close off the Straits of Hormuz, if they kill this American, to me, they committed an act of war when they were plotting to kill the Saudi ambassador in Washington and murder hundreds of Americans in restaurants in Washington, D.C. So, no, this is, again, much more tense than people realize. I mean, I think a lot of people think we can just sort of walk away from the world and everything will be fine, like a Ron Paul mentality who says Iran is not seeking nuclear weapons. That's why I think the president has made a mistake with such a large withdrawal, in fact, a total withdrawal of troops from Iraq, because having those troops there was a stabilizing force, not only within Iraq, but also against Iran. I think you're going to see Iran increasing its influence now in Iraq.
All right, well, these are all events we're going to be watching. We want to talk some more domestic politics. It's back, the debt ceiling debate, the extension about unemployment, and the cut in the Social Security payroll tax. It's all ahead for Congress, and we'll talk with Congressman King when we return.
It was fun up till now.
TV 10 and 55 Focus continues.
And welcome back. We're here with Congressman Peter King. That was funny. You said it was fun up until now, because it is no fun dealing with these perennial, what are becoming perennial logjam debates,
right.
Gridlock debates. Now, once again, the debt ceiling crisis reemerges. To explain that.
Yeah, basically the debt ceiling is going to have to be increased, and that's going to, I could see again, involving a down-to-the-wire struggle between Congress and the President. My understanding, the way we've adjusted the law now, is that the President can increase the debt ceiling, but then Congress can vote to override that, and the President can veto it, which means one way or the other, the debt ceiling probably will be increased, but it'll be a rancorous debate in Congress, and it'll just make for a more bitter relationship between Congress and the President.
You must tire of this. I would think that the people in Congress have to be tiring of this.
Yeah, you know, some people enjoy it. I'm getting tired of it because we do have so many real issues to address, real spending issues, budget issues, and I would rather deal with the 2012, 2013 budget issues and not bogged down, but sort of delayed by skirmishes that we know are going to end up being approved ultimately anyway.
And you see even that merging with the whole controversy over the recess appointments, because the president agreeing to wait till Congress returns to take up the whole question of extending the debt ceiling, but not doing that with recess appointments, where he appointed Richard Cordroy to the new National Consumer Financial Watchdog Bureau, and also appointing 3 people to the National Labor Relations Board. How do you feel about those recess appointments?
I think
constitutional or what?
I don't think it's constitutional, and it was really bad policy by the president. I mean, President Bush could have done the same thing and didn't. Generally, a president can make recess appointments. But then when the Democrats started keeping the Senate in pro forma session, President Bush decided not to do it. And I think that by doing it, President Obama could be causing a Supreme Court confrontation over this. And again, just really poisoning the well as far as the relations with Congress, making it almost impossible for any type of bipartisan arrangements to be agreed on. He really violated, I think he violated the law itself, but he certainly violated the spirit of it. And again, President Bush could have done this and didn't, because he felt that it would have divided the country too much.
And you have the Supreme Court going to take up the whole question of his health care reform law. So we already have a Supreme Court battle emerging there. You have any thoughts on how that's going to come out?
Yeah, I have thoughts. I mean, I haven't practiced law in a while. I try to stay up on it. The conventional wisdom is it's going to be a 5-4 decision, either saying it's constitutional or unconstitutional, and the 5th vote will be Anthony Kennedy of California. He's pretty much the swing vote now. It may end up being 9-0 or 8-1, but right now, most of the legal experts say it's going to be 5-4, and Anthony Kennedy being the swing vote.
And now here we're also going to be back at the end of February arguing about, or it'll probably begin immediately when you get back at the end of January, about extending the unemployment benefits and also the 2% cut in the payroll tax. What's going to happen there?
Again, I think it's going to go down to the wire, and it shouldn't. I thought the Republicans made a mistake back in December. The Republicans in the House, because the Senate had passed the extension for the 2 months by a vote of 93-6, or 89-11, I guess, was the vote. And some of the most conservative senators voted for it. And we got a lot in that bill. The president had said he wanted to have the millionaire tax. That was knocked out. We wanted the Keystone provision in there.
Still, that's part of this now, right?
Yeah, it's there. And the president agreed to allow that to go in. We support the payroll tax cut. We support extending unemployment insurance. So rather than getting involved in these side issues, which is really what they are, we should get this out of the way and really focus on the 2012 budget. That's the one we have to focus on.
Meanwhile, New York is going to lose 2 congressional seats. By now, we thought we'd know which ones they are. What's going on with that? That's because of our population not growing as fast as other states.
Yeah, we have to go from 29 seats in Congress to 27 in New York, even though our population stays the same overall. So, for instance, I believe in the 3rd congressional district, we'll have to pick up 70 to 80,000 new.
You'll represent more people as it's made, the districts are made bigger.
And it's how we draw them. There's a Democratic Assembly, a Republican Senate, Democratic governor. And I think the secret is that right now the state legislature is much more concerned about reapportionment for the state legislature than they are about Congress. We're sort of the afterthought right now. But the time is running out, because we used to have the primaries in September. The courts have said we can't because there's not enough time to get ballots to the troops overseas. So that the primary has to move to August or June, which means the lines have to be drawn earlier to make sure we have candidates, make sure the lines are upheld by the courts. So I would say probably in the next several weeks or month we should know what the lines are.
Yeah, and there's a whole debate about which seats. Maybe Anthony Weiner's one upstate, one downstate, a Republican, a Democrat, but it depends on who you ask on that one. And what I did want to ask you, we have just under a minute, is are you going to run for re-election again in November? I presume you will.
Yes, I am.
What term now?
This will be my 11th term. I've been in for 10 terms. I've been in over 19 years. My God.
How come not for president yet? There's a lot of people who have touted you for that. We have 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, actually, I gave it some thought, but you need hundreds of millions of dollars. It would have taken me away from you.
And that's it. You're right. There you go.
I couldn't.
Well, we'll give you the hundreds of millions on your way out as well.
Very good. Okay.
Terrific concession prices for being on Focus. Thank you very much
for
joining us today. Once again, Long Island Republican Congressman Peter King, thank you for being here. And thank you for being there. I'm Richard Rose. Be sure to join us next week for yet another edition of Focus.